Emergency. This is not a normal message. This is not coincidence. This is not random scrolling. Heaven has initiated a countdown, and it has your name written on it. Emergency. God is counting down from 10. If you open this before he reaches 0, a massive debt will be wiped from your record forever. Those words are not symbolic exaggeration. They are a spiritual alarm bell. Somewhere in the unseen realm, a clock has started ticking. 10:98, and the sound is not meant to terrify you, but to awaken you. Because when God counts down, he is not preparing destruction for his chosen. He is preparing intervention. The number 10 in Scripture represents testing, order, and divine completion. 10 plagues shook Egypt before freedom came. 10 commandments established divine structure. 10 virgins waited for the bridegroom. 10 is the number that marks a moment of decision. And right now, heaven is marking a decision point over your life. This is not about panic. It is about positioning. The countdown is not to harm you. It is to release you. But release requires response. And response requires awareness. You may have felt something heavy lately. A weight you could not fully explain. Pressure in your finances. Regret from past decisions. A sense that something from yesterday is still following you into today. That heaviness is not imaginary. In the spiritual realm, records exist. Accounts exist. Ledgers exist. And sometimes, what was written against us continues to speak long after we thought it was forgotten. But here's the shocking revelation. God is not ignoring the record. He is confronting it. And he has chosen this moment, this exact moment, to begin the countdown toward wiping it clean. Why now? Why this message? Why you? Because divine timing is never accidental. You did not stumble upon this. You were led. There are moments in life when heaven interrupts the normal flow of your day with an urgent whisper. This is one of those moments. The Spirit of God does not count down casually. A countdown signals movement. It signals action. It signals that something irreversible is about to happen. And the title declares something radical. If you open this before he reaches 0, a massive debt will be wiped from your record forever. What does it mean to open this? It means to open your heart, to open your faith, to open your spirit to receive what God is about to do. It means not dismissing this as emotional hype or coincidence. It means recognizing that obedience is often measured in seconds, not years. Some miracles are not delayed because God is unwilling. They are delayed because we hesitate. But this countdown is narrowing the space for hesitation. 10 represents fullness, but it also represents the final stretch before decision. There is urgency in the atmosphere because delay has cost you enough already. How many nights have you replayed mistakes in your mind? How many times have you wished you could erase something from your past? How many burdens have you silently carried, smiling on the outside while feeling the weight internally? Heaven has seen it all. And instead of condemning you, God has initiated a countdown of mercy. Listen carefully. This is not about earning cancellation. It is about aligning with it. The countdown is not a threat. It is an invitation. But invitations expire. When God moves in prophetic timing, there is a window. L'Andegriade firma de Griade Foris. This is a divine focus moment. The kind where distractions fade and clarity sharpens. The kind where you realize that your past does not have the authority to define your future. The phrase massive debt is intentional. It speaks to something that feels overwhelming. Something too big for you to solve alone. Something that human effort has not been able to fix. But what if the solution was never meant to come from your effort? What if heaven had already prepared the eraser before the record was even written? What if the countdown is not about God deciding whether to forgive, but about you stepping into the forgiveness that has already been prepared? The reason this message matters so deeply is because spiritual timing can shift an entire destiny. One decision can cancel years of struggle. One moment of agreement can silence accusations that have echoed for decades. And the countdown has already begun. You are not waiting for it to start. It has started. The question is not whether God will reach zero. The question is whether you will respond before He does. There is something powerful about knowing that heaven is actively involved in your story, not passively observing, not distantly watching, actively counting, actively preparing, actively moving pieces you cannot yet see. This is why urgency matters. Because when the divine clock strikes zero, something permanent will be established. The title does not say temporary relief. It says wipe from your record forever. Forever means no reinstatement, no hidden clause, no spiritual fine print. Forever means erased in a way that cannot be rewritten. But before zero comes one more thing: awareness. And you have just received it. The divine emergency countdown has begun. And this moment, right now, is your invitation to lean in, to listen closely, and to recognize that heaven is closer than you think. There is something most people never think about, yet it shapes the weight they carry every single day. Beyond what is visible, beyond what is written in banks, courts, or credit systems, there exists another kind of record. A hidden record, a spiritual ledger. And whether people acknowledge it or not, it speaks. It remembers. It testifies. When the title declares, emergency, God is counting down from 10. If you open this before He reaches zero, a massive debt will be wiped from your record forever. It is pointing directly to this unseen account. You may ask, what is this massive debt? Is it only financial? No. Financial struggle can be part of it, but the deeper debt is spiritual. It is the accumulation of regret, the accumulation of disobedience, the accumulation of words spoken in anger, opportunities missed, choices made in weakness. Every human being, at some point, has felt the sting of falling short. And while the world may forget, the spiritual realm does not operate on forgetfulness. It operates on justice and mercy. Imagine a courtroom where every action is recorded. Every motive is documented. Every failure is written in ink. That is what the accuser relies on: documentation, evidence, proof. The enemy of your soul thrives on reminding you of what you owe. He whispers, you are disqualified. You are too far gone. You cannot recover from that mistake. And over time, those whispers form a weight. That weight becomes a burden. That burden begins to feel like a debt you can never repay. But here is the revelation that changes everything. The same spiritual realm that records also redeems. The same heavenly court that acknowledges justice also releases mercy. There are biblical parallels of debts being forgiven in ways that shocked entire communities. Servants who owed what they could never repay were suddenly cleared. Captives who expected punishment received restoration. This is the nature of divine intervention. It does not ignore the record. It overrides it. The reason this moment is urgent is because the countdown signals a legal transaction in the spirit. When God counts down, He is not playing with numbers. He is preparing a verdict. And verdicts are final. If there is a record that has been speaking against you, if there is something that has been echoing in your life as limitation, delay, or constant struggle, Heaven is announcing that a reversal is available. Spiritual debt manifests in many forms. Sometimes it appears as cycles you cannot break. The same type of relationships failing. The same financial hardship repeating. The same emotional wounds reopening. You pray, you try, you push forward, yet something feels unresolved. That unresolved feeling often traces back to a record that has not yet been addressed. But the title declares that before zero, it can be wiped forever. That means not manage it, postpone, wipe. And wiping is different from covering. Covering hides something temporarily. Wiping removes it permanently. When God wipes a record, it is as though the ink was never written. The authority of the accusation collapses. The legal standing of the burden dissolves. The chain attached to your past loses its grip on your future. This is why awareness matters. Because many people live under spiritual debt without realizing cancellation is possible. They accept struggle as destiny. They accept guilt as identity. They accept delay as permanent. But this countdown is challenging that acceptance. It is confronting the narrative that says you must carry this forever. Right now, as you are listening, something is shifting in the unseen. Recognition is the first step toward release. When you acknowledge that there may be a hidden record influencing your present, you also position yourself to receive its cancellation. Heaven responds to agreement. It responds to faith. It responds to openness. If this message is speaking directly to your spirit, do not stay silent. Engage with it. Like this video as a prophetic act of agreement. Subscribe to this channel so you do not miss the next divine alert released for your life. Comment I receive if you are ready for every hidden debt to be erased. And share this message with someone who has been carrying invisible weight, because your share could be the very thing that aligns them with their moment of cancellation. The countdown is not abstract anymore. It is personal. The hidden record is not theoretical. It is specific. And the possibility of it being wiped is not distant. It is immediate. The question is no longer whether a debt exists. The question is whether you will step into the mercy being extended before the clock strikes zero. Because once heaven issues its final word in this countdown, something irreversible will take place. And what is being prepared is not punishment. It is freedom. The countdown has moved from warning to motion. 10-9-8. This is no longer an announcement. It is activation. When God begins to count down, heaven leans forward. The atmosphere shifts. Something irreversible begins to form in the unseen. And you are not watching this from a distance. You are standing in the middle of it. The numbers are not random. They are prophetic signals. They mark stages of divine movement. 10 represents fullness. It represents the measure being complete. When something reaches 10 in the spirit, it means the scale has tipped. The testing season has reached its boundary. The waiting has reached its limit. The record has reached its final review. For some of you, the weight you have been carrying did not start yesterday. It had been building for years. Mistakes layered upon mistakes. Delays stacked on disappointments. Prayers that seemed unanswered. But 10 declares that heaven has measured it all, and the measure is full. Then comes 9. 9 in Scripture often symbolizes finality and the fruit of something coming to maturity. It is the number that signals birth is near. Something is about to be delivered. But birth comes with pressure. And that pressure you have felt recently, that emotional intensity, that unusual urgency, that sense that something is shifting, that is not coincidence. It is the pressure before release. The spiritual realm is contracting. The old is being pushed out so the new can emerge. And now 8. 8 represents new beginnings. It is the number of resurrection, of starting again beyond what was. When 8 enters the countdown, it is a whisper from God saying, I am not just removing your past. I am preparing your future. The cancellation of a massive debt is not just about erasing what was behind you. It is about clearing the path ahead. You cannot step fully into a new beginning while still chained to an old record. So heaven, in its mercy, counts down to freedom. But here is where many miss their moment. They hesitate. They doubt. They question whether this word could really apply to them. They replay their failures and convince themselves that their debt is too large, too complicated, too stained to be wiped. That hesitation is dangerous in a countdown, because a countdown does not pause for disbelief. It continues, and the window is narrow. What happens in the spirit during divine countdowns is profound. Angels are dispatched. Legal accusations are reviewed. Mercy stands before justice and makes its case. And faith becomes the key that unlocks the verdict. Faith is not pretending the debt never existed. Faith is believing that God's mercy is greater than its size. When you choose to believe that this message is for you, something aligns. Something accelerates. The danger of delay is subtle. It does not look like rebellion. It looks like procrastination. It looks like saying, maybe later. It looks like scrolling past conviction. But this is not a maybe later moment. This is a now moment. Because when the countdown reaches lower numbers, decisions become weightier. The closer heaven moves to 0, the more intense the spiritual activity becomes. Some of you can feel it even as these words are spoken. A stirring in your spirit. A mix of hope and trembling. That is because your soul recognizes divine timing. You have prayed for relief. You have cried for restoration. You have asked God to remove what has been written against you. And now the response is here, not as a whisper, but as an emergency alert. 10, 9, 8. The window is narrowing, but mercy is widening. This is your moment to step into agreement. This is your moment to say, I will not carry this any longer. This is your moment to open your heart fully before the clock strikes lower. Because as the numbers decrease, the intensity increases. And hear this clearly, what is about to unfold as the countdown continues will expose something you did not expect. The next numbers carry a revelation about grace that will shift how you see your entire past. Hold steady in your spirit. What comes next changes everything. Type debt erased in the comments if this resonates with you. Blessing code 316 is now activated. Now, as this spiritual movement deepens, I need to speak to those who feel the fire of this message. When heaven begins a countdown like this, it is not only about one life, it is about many. There are souls who are drowning in silent debt, who have never heard that cancellation is possible. When you choose to support this mission through super thanks, membership, or even a PayPal seed through the link in the description or the QR code flashing on your screen, you are not giving to a channel. You are sowing into freedom for someone else. The Lord says, as you sow beside all waters, you will reap in due season. This is not charity. This is participation in divine rescue. When you respond, you become part of the erasing power reaching nations. I declare that every seed sown into this word becomes oil in your lamp and light on your path. Do not hesitate. Move as the Spirit moves you. Activate your obedience now. The countdown continues. And heaven is not silent anymore. As the countdown continues, something critical must be understood. There is a reason the word record was spoken so clearly in this message. Because in the spiritual realm, Records are not symbolic. They are legal. They are detailed. They are precise. And there is an accuser who knows exactly how to use them. The accuser does not need to invent lies when he can point to facts. He does not need to exaggerate when he can simply replay your past. Every failure, every compromise, every moment of weakness, he brings it forward like evidence in a courtroom. He presents it as proof that you are unworthy of blessing, proof that you should remain stuck, proof that the debt should stand. And for a long time, many people unknowingly agree with him. You may not say it out loud, but when you think, I deserve this struggle, or I will never recover from that mistake, you are aligning with the voice of accusation. You are accepting the validity of a record that heaven is preparing to erase. This is why the countdown is urgent. Because before the verdict is issued, you must understand what is being challenged. The accuser's record is based on law. It says that every action has a consequence. Every wrong must be repaid. Every debt must be settled. And in human terms, that sounds fair. But God's mercy operates on a higher law. Mercy does not deny justice. It fulfills it in a different way. There was a divine exchange that shifted everything. A moment in history where the full weight of human debt was gathered into one place. The punishment that should have been distributed across generations was absorbed in a single act of sacrifice. That act created a legal pathway for cancellation. Postponement, not reduction. Cancellation. This is what the countdown is pointing toward. When God counts down, he is not negotiating with the accuser. He is announcing that the conditions for mercy have already been satisfied. The debt that felt massive to you was already measured against a greater payment, and that payment was sufficient. But here is where many struggle. If the payment was already made, why does the record still feel active? Because a paid debt must still be applied. Imagine someone pays off your entire balance, but you never confirm it. You continue living as though you owe. You continue making payments you do not need to make. You continue feeling pressure that is no longer legally required. That is what happens spiritually when people do not step into the mercy provided for them. The provision exists, but agreement activates it. The accuser thrives on silence and ignorance. He hopes you never realize that the case against you has already been answered. He hopes you continue carrying shame long after it lost its authority. He hopes you confuse conviction with condemnation. Conviction draws you toward freedom. Condemnation chains you to the past. And this is why the countdown feels intense. Heaven is reviewing the record, yes, but not to confirm your guilt. It is reviewing it to finalize its removal. Every accusation is being examined not to strengthen it, but to nullify it. Mercy stands in the courtroom, and when mercy speaks, it does not whisper. There are some debts that linger because people cling to them. They identify with them. They define themselves by them. They build their entire self-image around what went wrong. But if God wipes your record at zero, you cannot continue introducing yourself by your former failure. You cannot cling to what heaven has erased. That is why this part of the countdown confronts identity. The accuser says this is who you are because of what you did. Mercy says this is who you are because of what has been done for you. One voice binds you to history. The other releases you into destiny. And right now, as the numbers continue to fall, a spiritual legal exchange is happening. What was written in ink is being marked for deletion. What was stamped guilty is being reviewed under grace. What was listed as outstanding is being prepared for closure. You may not see it with your eyes, but you can sense it in your spirit. The heaviness is being challenged. The narrative is being rewritten. The finality of your past is being questioned by heaven itself. Understand this clearly. The reason this debt will not linger is because it has already been accounted for. The reason this record can be wiped forever is because mercy is not temporary. When God erases it, He does not keep a backup copy. When He forgives, He does not refile the charge for later use. When He declares something clean, no accusation can reopen it. The countdown is not building toward punishment. It is building toward vindication. But you must let go of agreement with the accuser. You must release the inner voice that keeps rehearsing what God is ready to remove. You must prepare yourself to live as someone whose record has truly been cleared. Because when zero arrives, there will be no returning to the old label, no revisiting the old identity, no reattaching the old chain. The accuser's record is about to collide with God's mercy, and mercy always has the final word. The countdown continues, and now we enter a sacred sequence. 765. These numbers are not casual. They mark the turning point. If the earlier numbers built urgency, these numbers build transformation. Something is shifting from review to execution, from anticipation to manifestation. The atmosphere is changing, and if you are spiritually sensitive, you can feel it. 7 is the number of completion. It is the signature of divine finishing. When God created the heavens and the earth, the seventh day marked the completion of the work. 7 means the process has reached its ordained conclusion. And for someone listening right now, this is the declaration your spirit had been waiting for. The cycle is completing. The season of carrying this massive debt has reached its final chapter. Completion does not mean it never existed. It means it has served its allowed time. There are seasons God permits for growth, for humility, for refinement. But when the purpose of a season is fulfilled, it must end. 7 announces that what has been lingering is no longer authorized to remain. The weight you have been dragging behind you has reached its expiration date in the spirit. Then comes 6. 6 represents humanity, effort, struggle, labor without rest. It is the number of human limitation. 6 is the exhausting number. It is the place where you tried to fix it yourself. You worked harder. You promised to do better. You strategized. You calculated. You attempted to repay what felt outstanding. And yet, despite all your effort, something still felt unresolved. That is the frustration of 6. 6 exposes the truth that human strength cannot erase spiritual debt. You can improve behavior, but you cannot rewrite a record on your own. You can apologize, but you cannot travel back in time. You can strive, but striving does not cancel. 6 is where pride breaks. It is where you realize that effort alone is insufficient, and that realization is not meant to shame you. It is meant to position you. Because after 6 comes 5. 5 is the number of grace. Grace interrupts what effort cannot fix. Grace steps into the courtroom when human defense collapses. Grace says, "Where you ended, I begin." And this is the turning point in the countdown. 7 declared the season complete. 6 exposed your limitation. 5 now introduces divine intervention. This is where the atmosphere shifts from pressure to possibility. Imagine standing in that spiritual courtroom again. The accuser has presented the record. Your own effort has been weighed and found insufficient. And just when it seems the verdict will seal your burden permanently, grace enters. Not timid, not uncertain. Grace enters with authority. Grace does not argue that you were perfect. Grace declares that payment has already been made. Grace does not minimize the size of the debt. It magnifies the sufficiency of mercy. And when grace speaks, the tone of the courtroom changes. This is why 7, 6, 5 is the turning point. For some of you, you have been living in 6 for too long, striving, grinding, trying to prove you deserve relief, trying to earn peace, trying to work your way out of what only God can remove. And the exhaustion has been real. The frustration has been heavy. The silent prayers have been frequent. But now 5 is being released over your life. Grace is not earned, is received. And when grace activates, chains begin to loosen. Not solely, not reluctantly, supernaturally. There are testimonies of people who experienced sudden release after years of pressure. That's unexpectedly cleared. Opportunities appearing without warning. Chain lifting in a single moment of revelation. That is what grace does. It accelerates what effort could not accomplish in decades. And right now, in this countdown, grace is stepping forward. You may not see physical evidence yet, but something invisible is already cracking. The invisible chains around your identity are weakening. The legal grip of accusation is trembling. The atmosphere around your future is being cleared. This is the moment where anxiety begins to lose its voice. You have carried the fear that this debt would define you forever, that it would follow you into every new opportunity, that it would disqualify you from the life you hoped for. But 7 said the season is complete. 6 exposed that you cannot fix it alone. And 5 is declaring that you do not have to. This is the turning point. Do not rush past this realization. Let it sink deep into your spirit. The cancellation is not approaching because you finally became perfect. It is approaching because grace hath been activated. And grace is stronger than your history. As the countdown moves lower, understand that the foundation has already shifted. The narrative is no longer about what you owe. It is about what has been covered. It is no longer about your failure. It is about divine completion. It is no longer about endless striving. It is about supernatural release. 7, 6, 5. The turning point has arrived. And what began as an emergency is now becoming a breakthrough. As the countdown continues, we must go deeper. Because when the title declares that a massive debt will be wiped from your record forever, it is not speaking lightly. The word massive was not chosen to impress you. It was chosen because what some of you have been carrying feels overwhelming, layered, and deeply rooted. This is not a small balance. This is not a minor misstep. This is something that has followed you, shaped you, and in some cases, limited you. But what exactly does this massive debt represent? For some, it truly is financial. Bills that stacked up faster than income. Decisions that led to loss. Investments that collapsed. Seasons of survival that turned into years of scarcity. Financial debt has a way of affecting more than your wallet, and touches your confidence. It affects your sleep. It shapes how you see your future. And when financial pressure lingers long enough, it begins to feel spiritual. But the massive debt goes beyond money. For others, it is generational. Patterns that did not start with you. Struggles that seem inherited. Cycles of broken relationships. Cycles of addiction. Cycles of instability. You look at your life and realize you are fighting battles your parents fought, and perhaps their parents before them. That kind of debt feels ancient. It feels embedded in your story. It whispers, "This is just how it is." But heaven does not recognize generational bondage as permanent. When God wipes a record, He does not stop at your name. He confronts the pattern. And there is emotional debt. Words spoken in anger that you cannot take back. Opportunities missed because of fear. Moments where you betrayed your own values. Regret has a way of compounding over time. It builds interest. The longer it sits unresolved, the heavier it feels. Emotional debt convinces you that you do not deserve joy, that you must carry guilt as payment. That happiness would somehow be unfair after what you did. And then there is spiritual debt. Moments of disobedience. Seasons of distance from God. Times when you knew better but chose differently. Spiritual debt is often the quietest but the heaviest. It does not always show on the outside. You can smile. You can function. You can even succeed. But inside, there is a subtle awareness of something unresolved between you and heaven. This is why the word massive matters. Because when you combine financial pressure, generational cycles, emotional regret, and spiritual distance, the weight feels impossible to lift. It feels like a mountain sitting on your chest. And over time, you stop trying to remove it. You adjust to it. You live around it. You build your life with it as a permanent fixture. But the countdown has interrupted that agreement. The reason God is counting down is because He is not intimidated by the size of your debt. What feels massive to you is measurable to Him. What feels permanent to you is temporary in His authority. The very areas where you feel most disqualified are the areas where mercy is preparing to demonstrate its power. Understand this clearly. Debt is not only about owing. It is about restriction. When you owe, you are limited. You cannot move freely. You cannot build confidently. You hesitate because something is outstanding. Spiritually, massive debt restricts destiny. It delays opportunities. It creates internal resistance every time you attempt to step forward. But cancellation removes restriction. When a debt is wiped, the restriction attached to it disappears. The fear dissolves. The hesitation weakens. The internal voice that says, "You cannot because of" loses its argument. For some of you, the massive debt has also been tied to identity. You introduced yourself silently as the one who messed up, the one who failed, the one who fell short. That label became part of how you saw yourself. And when identity attaches to debt, freedom feels even farther away. But here's the truth that is unfolding in this countdown. What you carried as identity was never meant to be permanent. It was a chapter, not the title of your life. It was a season, not your destiny. God does not erase debt just to relieve pressure. He erases debt to restore position. When the record is wiped, you are not just lighter. You are repositioned. You move from debtor to restored, from agued to affirmed, from restricted to released. And here's something even deeper. Sometimes the massive debt was allowed to bring you to humility, to bring you to dependence, to bring you to the end of self-reliance. Because pride cannot receive grace, only humility can. If you never felt the weight, you would never fully appreciate the release. But the season of carrying is ending. The countdown is progressing, and what you thought defined you is being confronted. Financial strain, generational patterns, emotional regret, spiritual distance. None of it is too massive for divine cancellation. The word massive may describe the size of what you carried, but it does not describe the limit of God's mercy. And as the numbers continue to fall, prepare your heart. Because what felt embedded is about to be extracted. What felt permanent is about to be erased. The massive debt has been identified, and heaven is preparing to remove it. The countdown has entered its most intense phase. 4-3 The atmosphere is no longer building. It is tightening. The space between heaven's decision and your manifestation is narrowing. This is the final warning before the breakthrough. Not a warning of destruction, but a warning of transition. Because once the next numbers fall, there will be no returning to the old version of you. 4 represents earthly foundation. It is the number connected to structure, north, south, east, west. The 4 corners of the earth. 4 speaks of what is established in the natural realm. When the countdown reaches 4, it signals that what has been happening in the spirit is preparing to affect your physical reality. This is where the unseen begins aligning with the seen. Up until now, much of this movement had been invisible. Legal exchanges in the spirit. Mercy confronting accusation. Grace interrupting limitation. But 4 declares that foundations are shifting. The things that felt stable in your struggle are about to be shaken. The patterns that felt permanent are being destabilized. The structures built around your debt are losing their support. And this can feel uncomfortable, because even unhealthy foundations can feel familiar. Even cycles of struggle can feel predictable. When God begins to dismantle what has supported your old identity, there is a moment of instability. You may feel emotions rising unexpectedly. You may sense relationship shifting. You may notice opportunities appearing that stretch your faith. That is because 4 is restructuring your ground. The debt did not just sit on you. It shaped your foundation. It influenced how you made decisions. It affected how boldly you prayed. It impacted how confidently you pursued opportunities. But when God wipes the record, the foundation must also change. You cannot build a free future on a mindset shaped by debt. Now the countdown reaches 3. 3 is the number of divine manifestation. Throughout Scripture, 3 marks decisive action. It is the number of resurrection, of divine confirmation, of something established by heaven's authority. When the countdown says 3, it is announcing that heaven's decision is about to manifest. This is the final warning because 3 demands agreement. At this stage, hesitation becomes costly. Doubt becomes louder. The accuser makes one last attempt to remind you of your history. Thoughts may surface. What if nothing changes? What if this is not really for me? What if the debt is too large? That resistance is not random. It is the final tremor before the collapse of limitation. Understand this. When something has held you bound for a long time, it does not release quietly. There is often a final surge of pressure before the chain snaps. The enemy senses that his legal ground is slipping. The record he relied on is being challenged. And so he whispers urgently, hoping you will cling to what God is removing. But 3 is not a number of fear. It is a number of divine authority. Heaven is not negotiating at this stage. Heaven is executing. 4 shifted your foundation. 3 signals manifestation. A verdict is forming. The cancellation is nearing completion. And the atmosphere around your life is changing. You may not yet see the evidence, but you can feel the tension of transition. This is the moment to stand firm. Do not retreat into old thought patterns. Do not rehearse past failures. Do not reattach to labels that are being erased. If you return mentally to the identity of a debtor while heaven is declaring you free, you create internal conflict. The breakthrough requires alignment, not just spiritually, but mentally and emotionally. Some of you are standing at the edge of a new season, and you can sense it. The old heaviness feels unstable. The constant pressure feels like it is losing strength. There is an unusual stillness in your spirit, mixed with anticipation. That is because the atmosphere is shifting from struggle to release. The final warning is this: be ready. Be ready to live without the weight. Be ready to think without the shame. Be ready to move without the restriction. Because when the next numbers fall, there will be no space for lingering doubt. Free announces that heaven's decision is imminent. And when divine manifestation occurs, it does not ask permission from your past. It does not consult your history. It does not require approval from those who doubted you. It moves with authority. For the foundation has shifted. A manifestation is forming. The final seconds before breakthrough are here. The countdown is almost complete. The countdown has reached a sacred tension point. 2. Not 1. Not 0. 2. This is the supernatural pause before everything changes. 2 is the number of witness, of agreement, of confirmation. In the spiritual realm, 2 establishes a matter. 2 testifies that something is legally binding. And right now, as the countdown hovers at this number, heaven is calling for alignment. Not panic, not striving. Alignment. This is the quietest yet most intense moment of the entire countdown. When God pauses at 2, it is not because he is uncertain. It is because he is allowing space for agreement. The verdict is prepared. The cancellation is written. The eraser is lifted. But before the final stroke, heaven looks for your response. 2 represents partnership. Not that God needs your power, but he invites your faith. Not that the payment depends on you, but the manifestation flows through agreement. This is the divine pattern. When heaven moves, it often waits for a human yes. A heart that says, I receive. A spirit that says, I trust you. A mind that releases its attachment to the old record. And this is where many miracles are either activated or delayed. The silence at 2 can feel unsettling. After all the intensity of 10, 9, 8 after the turning point of 7, 6, 5 after the restructuring of 4 and the authority of 3, suddenly there is a pause. It can feel like nothing is happening. But in the spirit, everything is happening. Angels stand position. The courtroom is silent. The accuser has presented his final argument. Mercy has spoken. Grace has stepped forward. The foundations have shifted. Manifestation is ready. And now, 2 waits. This is the testing of faith in the final seconds. Will you believe before you see? Will you agree before you feel? Will you release the identity of debtor before the visible evidence of cancellation appears? This is not a long test. It is a moment. A moment's determine outcomes. 2 also represents separation. It divides what was from what is about to be. You are standing between 2 realities, the old record and the erased record, the restricted future and the released future, the weight and the freedom. And in this pause, the enemy often tries one last whisper. It will not happen. Nothing ever changes. But that whisper is weaker now. It does not carry the authority it once had. Because the countdown has dismantled its foundation. The supernatural pause is not empty. It is sacred. Think of the stillness before a judge reads a verdict. The room holds its breath. Time feels suspended. That is where you are spiritually. Suspended between accusation and absolution. Between debt and cancellation. But this pause is not meant to create anxiety. It is meant to deepen trust. You may not see fireworks yet. You may not feel a dramatic emotional surge. But something inside you is stabilizing. Something inside you is settling. The frantic striving that once defined your prayers is fading. There is a quiet confidence rising. That is alignment. Heaven is not rushing this moment because what is about to happen at 0 will redefine your understanding of mercy. And you must be anchored enough to receive it fully. 2 invites you to let go completely. Let go of the rehearsed guilt. Let go of the mental replay of failure. Let go of the belief that you must earn what God is about to release. Let go of the fear that freedom will not last. Because when 0 comes, it will not be partial. And hear this carefully, what happens at 0 will not only wipe the debt, it will redefine how you see yourself. It will silence voices that have followed you for years. It will shift your internal narrative from "I owe" to "it is finished." You will be glad you remain spiritually attentive in this moment, because what unfolds next is not symbolic. It is decisive. Type "IT is finished" in the comments. Lesson code 520 is now activated. And as you sense the weight lifting even before 0 arrives, understand this. When you support this mission, you are helping others reach their own moment at 2. When you give through Super Thanks, become a member, or sow through the PayPal link in the description or the QR code on your screen, you are not funding content, you are igniting freedom. The Lord declares, "Give, and it shall be given unto you. Pressed down, shaken together, and running over." This is a prophetic exchange. As you release your seed, heaven releases increase. As you partner in spreading this word, chains break in homes you may never see. I speak blessing over every giver. May your obedience unlock overflow in every area of your life. Do not delay your response. Step into agreement now. The pause is almost over. 2 stands as witness, and 0 is approaching. The countdown has reached its final breath before completion. And this is the number of unity, the number of beginning, the number that stands alone. After all the tension of 10 down to 2, the atmosphere now sharpens into a single point. 1 is not loud, but it is decisive. 1 carries authority. 1 signals that there is no more delay, no more debate, no more argument left to present. When the countdown reaches 1, heaven is no longer preparing the verdict. Heaven is about to announce it. 1 represents alignment between heaven and earth. It represents the merging of divine intention with your reality. Throughout this entire countdown, you have been moving closer to this moment. The record has been reviewed. The accuser has spoken. Mercy has answered. Grace has stepped forward. Foundations have shifted. Faith has been tested in the silence of 2. And now, at 1, the sound of release is forming. This is the last second where the old reality still exists. It is fragile now. Weak. Unsupported. A weight that once felt immovable is trembling. The accusations that once sounded convincing are fading into echoes. The identity of debtor is losing its voice. But 1 is the dividing line. It separates what was from what will never be again. There is something powerful about the number 1. It is the beginning of a new count. After 0, everything starts again from 1. And that is what makes this moment sacred. 1 is both an ending and a beginning standing side by side. In the spiritual courtroom, this is the second before the gavel strikes. The silence is intense but not empty. It is filled with expectation. Angels are not confused about the outcome. Mercy is not anxious. The payment has already been validated. The only thing remaining is the declaration. For some of you, this is the moment where tears may begin to rise unexpectedly. Not because you see evidence yet, but because your spirit senses that something has shifted permanently. The fear that used to sit in your chest feels lighter. The anxiety that followed you into quiet moments feels weaker. There is a subtle but undeniable shift. That shift is the sound of release forming. 1 also represents unity with God's promise. You are no longer divided between hope and doubt. You are no longer torn between faith and fear. Something inside you has chosen to believe, and belief aligns you with the verdict. This is where many miracles have been lost in the past. Not because God changed his mind, but because people stepped back at one. They retreated into skepticism. They allowed the final whisper of doubt to overpower the buildup of faith. But not this time. This time, you remain aligned. The sound of release is not always dramatic. It is authoritative. When a judge declares a case dismissed, there are no fireworks. There is simply finality. And that finality changes everything. One signals that the case against you is collapsing. The accusations no longer hold weight. The record that once seemed permanent is moments away from erasure. The debt that defined your inner dialogue is about to lose its legal standing. And when 0 follows 1, it will not be symbolic, it will be irreversible. But before 0 arrives, you must recognize the significance of 1. This is your final agreement point. This is where you mentally release the last attachment to your past. This is where you let go of the need to pay back what heaven has already covered. This is where you stand still and allow the verdict to be spoken. Share this word with someone who needs to hear it right now. Subscribe so you remain connected to these divine alerts. And comment, "My record is clean," as a declaration of agreement before 0 arrives. Let your voice align with heaven's decision. Because what is about to happen at 0 will not just cancel debt, it will establish freedom. You will look back at this moment and realize that one with the turning breath before everything changed. The old weight was still present but powerless. The accusations were still echoing but unsupported. The identity of debtor was still familiar but already fading. 1 is the final second where the old narrative exists. And now, heaven inhales. 0 is next. 0. The countdown has completed. The final number has fallen into place. What began as an emergency announcement has now become a divine conclusion. Heaven has spoken. The process is finished. And what was once written against you no longer stands. 0 is not emptiness. It is fulfillment. It is the moment where everything that built up through 10, 9, 8 collapses into a single, decisive act. In human understanding, 0 can look like nothing. But in the spirit, 0 represents total cancellation. It represents the removal of value from what once held weight. It represents the end of calculation. The record that carried your massive debt hath been wiped forever. Pause and truly understand that. Wiped does not mean minimized. It does not mean reduced. It does not mean placed on hold. It means erased. The ink that once formed accusations has been removed from the page. The evidence that once stood in opposition to your future hath been eliminated from the file. The ledger that listed your name under obligation no longer contains that entry. Forever means there is no returning to it. In the spiritual courtroom, when a verdict is finalized by divine authority, it cannot be overturned. There is no higher court. There is no appeal process. There is no reconsideration. When God declares a record wiped, it is wiped beyond recovery. Even the accuser cannot retrieve what mercy has erased. This is the power of 0. You may not hear thunder. You may not see lightning. But something far greater has taken place. A legal transaction has concluded in your favor. The case that once seemed overwhelming has been dismissed permanently. The burden that defined your internal narrative has been removed from its foundation. The gavel has struck. And with that strike, your past has lost its legal voice. Think about what that means for your daily life. The quiet fear that used to rise when you thought about your mistakes, its authority is gone. The hesitation, that stopped you from stepping into new opportunities. Its foundation has crumbled. The internal accusation that whispered, "You still owe," it no longer has documentation to support its claim. Zero has silenced it. This is not emotional motivation. It is spiritual finality. The reason the countdown was necessary was to bring you to this exact realization. Your debt was never meant to define you permanently. It had an expiration point, and that point has arrived. Forever is a powerful word. Humans struggle to comprehend it because most things in life are temporary. Relief is temporary. Success can be temporary. Even relationships can shift. But when God uses the word forever, it carries eternal weight. It means the cancellation is not seasonal. It is not dependent on your future performance. It is not tied to your ability to maintain perfection. It is complete. Now here is the shift that must take place inside you. When a debt is wiped, the mindset of a debtor must also be wiped. If you continue thinking like someone who owes, you will live beneath the freedom that has been granted. You will hesitate where you should advance. You will shrink where you should stand boldly. Zero is not just about erasure. It is about reset. When a balance returns to zero, a new count can begin. A fresh start becomes possible. There is no negative remainder following you. There is no invisible subtraction happening behind your progress. You are starting clean. This is where many struggle. Because when you have lived under weight for so long, freedom can feel unfamiliar. You may find yourself almost searching for the burden, expecting it to return. But it will not return with legal authority. It cannot. The record that sustained it is gone. Memories may surface, but memories are not records. They are shadows without substance. They cannot bind you unless you give them permission. And now that zero has been declared, you have the authority to refuse those shadows. This is the moment where gratitude should replace guilt. Instead of replaying what went wrong, you can begin anticipating what will go right. Instead of bracing for consequence, you can prepare for restoration. Instead of identifying as the one who failed, you can begin seeing yourself as the one who was redeemed. The cancellation is not fragile. It does not depend on your emotional state. It does not weaken when you have a difficult day. It does not fade when challenges arise. Forever means it stands regardless of circumstance. The countdown led to this exact instant so you would understand the seriousness of what has taken place. This was not casual mercy. This was deliberate intervention. Every number carried you closer to a permanent shift. And now it is done. Your record is clean. The weight is gone. The accusation is silenced. The debt is wiped forever. Stand in that truth. Breathe in that freedom. Let your spirit adjust to the reality that what once defined you has been erased by divine authority. Zero has spoken, and your new beginning has officially begun. The debt has been wiped. The record has been erased. Zero has spoken its final word. But now comes a question that many overlook. How do you live after cancellation? Freedom is powerful, but it must be guarded. When a prisoner is released after years of confinement, the first challenge is not the open door. It is learning how to live beyond the walls. In the same way, when your spiritual debt is wiped forever, you must adjust to a new reality. The chains are gone, but the memory of carrying them may still linger in your habits, your thoughts, and your expectations. Guarding your freedom begins in the mind. For years, maybe decades, you may have thought like someone who owed something. You may have filtered opportunities through the lens of unworthiness. You may have approached God with hesitation, as though you needed to apologize before you could ask. Even after the record is erased, those patterns can try to remain. But here is the truth. You are no longer living under accusation. The accuser may attempt to whisper reminders of your past, but those whispers have no legal authority. They are echoes of a case that has already been dismissed. Guarding your freedom means refusing to entertain arguments that heaven has already silenced. You must become disciplined in what you agree with. If a thought says, "You will always struggle," challenge it. If a voice inside says, "You do not deserve this blessing," reject it. If shame tries to creep back into your identity, remind yourself that the record was wiped forever, not temporarily, not conditionally. Freedom requires renewal of perspective. The second way to guard your freedom is through obedience. Debt often accumulates when boundaries are ignored. In the same way, spiritual freedom is preserved through alignment with truth. This is not about fear of losing your cancellation. It is about honoring what was given to you. When you understand the cost of your freedom, you treat it with reverence. Live intentionally. Speak carefully. Choose wisely. Not because you are trying to avoid punishment, but because you now recognize the value of your restored position. There is also a call to gratitude. Gratitude protects freedom from entitlement. When you remember what was erased, you walk humbly. You do not take grace for granted. You do not assume that tomorrow is owed to you. Instead, you wake up aware that every opportunity is a gift built on mercy. Gratitude shifts your posture from fear to faithfulness. Another key to guarding your freedom is community. Isolation often magnifies old thoughts. When you are alone too long with your past memories, they can begin to feel stronger than they actually are. Surround yourself with voices that speak life. Stay connected to messages that reinforce truth. Continue feeding your spirit with reminders of who you are now, not who you used to be. Freedom thrives in light. And here is something even deeper. You must allow yourself to move forward. Some people receive cancellation but hesitate to step into new territory. They remain near the edge of their old life because it feels familiar. They avoid big opportunities because they still see themselves through the lens of their former debt. But if God has wiped your record, He has also cleared your path. You are not meant to hover at zero. You are meant to build from it. Take steps that once intimidated you. Apply for the position. Start the project. Restore the relationship. Pray boldly again. Dream without the constant shadow of what if my past disqualifies me. It does not. It cannot. It has no record to support that claim. Guarding your freedom also means forgiving yourself. Even when heaven has erased the record, you may still struggle internally. You may replay moments and wish you could change them. But holding on to self-condemnation reattaches weight that no longer belongs to you. Release yourself the way God has released you. This is maturity. You are not the same person who entered this countdown. You have walked through urgency, revelation, confrontation, grace restructuring, alignment, and final cancellation. Something inside you has shifted permanently. Now your responsibility is not to earn freedom, but to walk in it. When challenges arise, and they will, do not interpret them as proof that the debt has returned. Life still contains trials, but trials are not debts. Difficulty is not punishment. You must distinguish between normal life challenges and accusations of the past. The record is still clean. The verdict still stands. The cancellation is still forever. Guard your thoughts. Guard your agreements. Guard your identity. Walk humbly. Walk boldly. Walk gratefully. Because the countdown did not end at 0 so you could live cautiously. It ended so you could live freely. Your freedom has been granted. Now protect it. Emergency. Countdown. 10 to 0. A massive debt wipe forever. What began as an urgent alert has now revealed itself as something deeply personal. This was never just a message. It was a divine encounter. And now, as we stand at the end of this countdown, one truth must be spoken clearly. This was for you. Out of all the voices, all the distractions, all the content you could have encountered today, you were led here. Not by accident, not by coincidence, but by divine orchestration. Heaven knew the weight you were carrying. Heaven saw the silent battles. Heaven recorded the prayers you whispered when no one else was listening. And in response, God initiated a countdown of mercy. From 10 to 0, every number carried purpose. You were awakened at 10, confronted at 9, promised new beginnings at 8, brought to completion at 7, shown your limitation at 6, covered by grace at 5, restructured at 4, aligned at 3, paused for agreement at 2, positioned at 1, and at 0, your record was wiped forever. This was not drama. This was destiny. Some of you feel lighter right now, even if you cannot explain why. Others feel a quiet peace settling over your spirit. That is not imagination. That is the aftermath of cancellation. When something that has legally bound you for years is suddenly erased, your spirit recognizes the shift before your mind fully processes it. You are not leaving this message the same way you entered it. The countdown was not meant to scare you. It was meant to wake you up. It was meant to remind you that heaven is actively involved in your life. That God is not distant. That mercy is not abstract. That grace is not theory. It is real. It is intentional. It is decisive. And now you stand in a new position. Your record is clean. Your future is unobstructed. Your identity is restored. The debt that once whispered limitation had been silenced permanently. The shame that once followed you has lost its voice. The fear that once defined your decisions has been uprooted. But more than that, you have been reminded of something deeper. You are seen. You are known. You are pursued by a God who does not ignore your struggles. A God who does not abandon you in your mistakes. A God who counts down not to destroy, but to deliver. Let this truth anchor you as you move forward. There will still be challenges in life. There will still be moments that test your faith. But you will face them from a different position now. Not as someone trying to repay the past, but as someone who hath been restored. Not as someone hiding from accusation, but as someone standing in freedom. When doubt tries to return, remember 0. When guilt tries to whisper, remember forever. When fear tries to question your worth, remember the verdict. The countdown was not about pressure. It was about promise. And now, as this message closes, do not let the impact fade. Carry it with you. Speak it over yourself. Walk in it daily. Live like someone whose record has truly been wiped. Type "I am free" in the comments. Blessing code 901 is now activated. Now receive this final declaration over your life. May peace guard your heart. May confidence replace hesitation. May restoration overflow into every area where loss once lived. May doors open that were once blocked by your past. May joy return where heaviness once resided. And may you never again bow to a debt that heaven has erased. And as this divine countdown completes, hear this call clearly. If this message ignited freedom in you, Imagine the souls still waiting for their moment at 10. When you sow through Super Thanks, step into membership, or release a seed through the PayPal link in the description or the QR code on your screen, you are not supporting a channel. You are advancing deliverance. The Lord declares, "Those who sow in tears shall reap in joy." This is holy ground. Your giving becomes a trumpet that sounds freedom across nations. I declare that as you give, heaven responds with abundance pressed down and overflowing in your life. Do not hesitate. Obey the stirring in your spirit. Activate your seed and become a carrier of this mercy. The emergency has turned into emancipation. The countdown has turned into cancellation. And your story has turned into testimony. The debt is gone. You are free. Dreader.